Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian ONeal.
He's here, kids.
Well, good morning to you.
Primary results from this past Tuesday.
It shows, especially in New York State, but also to a certain extent around the country, that this progressive, not-so-liberal effort is beginning to pick up some steam in the Democrat Party. And when I'm talking about not-so-progressive liberal effort, I'm talking about AOC and her craziness. Of course, she was opposed in the primary, but she won overwhelmingly, and she has been able to amass, I think, over $10 million in terms of contributions and such, which I think she will use to a great extent to fund perhaps other candidates whom she supports. But the point is, she won overwhelmingly in her primary, and the congressional district next to her, a Democrat, Engler, I believe his name was, who was I think he's been there for 30 years or more, as chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and was endorsed by Cuomo and de Blasio and Schumer and Pelosi, and his opponent was endorsed by AOC, and his opponent currently is leading him quite a ways in the primary, and it looks like AOC's candidate is going to win that nomination without too much trouble. Now, the point about these districts is basically they're all solid Democrats. So, frankly, whoever wins the Democrat nominations quite likely to win the general election. And then, in addition to that, you'd have two other candidates, the so-called progressive liberal types down there, both progressive types, so we can get enough diversity here and identity politics into play. And both of them are at this point leading in both of those congressional seats are open seats. So you had two incumbents retire, and now you've got the progressive liberal types in the lead in those primaries. I don't know quite how they're going to fit into the Black Caucus there, but we'll see how that plays if they win and end up in the House. But in any case, all four of these candidates, I would think, are going to be a real pain in the neck for Nancy Pelosi, and a problem for the Democrats generally, especially people like Schumer and Gillibrand, who try to stay toward the middle of the left. Additionally, we saw out in Kentucky, there's an interesting primary there for the U.S. Senate race for the Democrats to oppose Mitch McConnell. And a woman by the name of McGrath had that pretty well sewn up. She had raised, I forget how many millions of dollars, had a good-sized war chest, and some guy, again, another progressive liberal, last time I saw he had something like 500,000, but apparently at the last minute he's picked up contributions, and right now he's within 4,000 votes of McGrath, and there's still, I don't know how many thousands of absentee ballots to be counted. So she may well lose. And again, that'd be your liberal, really liberal progressive side of the Democrats taking on the old mainstream Democrats. So there's definitely something going on out there.
Dr. Heineman, if we could get back to AOC for a second, would Congresswoman Alexandria OcasioCortez inflict any kind of political payback against the party officials who tried to unseat her?
Well, I think I think she'll be a problem for them. Now, I don't know what kind of payback she's in a position to give yet, but in terms of beginning to put together a reasonably substantial progressive liberal type of bloc, I think she could have some movement there. I think the thing about it is, it does show there's something going on there in the Democrat Party that shows Pelosi and Schumer and some of these people kind of out of touch with how radical this is. And then you tie it in, of course, with these street riots and attempts to tear down any kind of statue that happens to be around. I mean, there's definitely something pretty volatile and, frankly, pretty dangerous going on there on the Democrat side. So we'll see. We'll just have to see how that plays out. It'll be a little while, of course, till all the absentee ballots are counted. But in the four I mentioned, obviously AOC has already won. I don't think she can be beaten, and the other three are pretty much pretty good shape there. I might also mention that in Monroe County, Rochester, you're beginning to see a real battle between Lovely Warren, the mayor of Rochester, and Joe Morelli, who is just won the congressional seat as a Democrat. And I think you're seeing some of this division in the Democrat Party playing out in the Rochester area as well. And we'll see how that operates.
Dr. Bob, on the whole thing with Chris Collins' opponent, Chris Jacobs wins the Chris Collins seat in the House of Representatives, and his opponent, Nate McMurray, doesn't want to give it up. He wants every single vote counted. What do you make of that?
Well, Jacobs has won, and, of course, McMurray has a chance again to run in the fall. So all Jacobs has done now is won the remainder months of the seat that Collins had, and he will then run in the general election in November, and I assume McMurray will be the Democrat opponent there. Now that opens up a lot more in terms of how that vote plays out, because you'll have independents voting, and you'll have Democrats able to cross party lines as well as Republicans crossing party lines. And again, the state Senate seat that Jacobs has run from and won is two-thirds Democrat to start with. So he runs pretty well with the Democrats regardless. And it's the district is, I think, a margin of 40,000 Republican voters anyway. I think he's in pretty good shape. And so I think the interesting point of that was that he tied himself very tightly to President Trump. And Trump and his son, and I think a number of other high-level Trump people came in through phone calls and visits to support Jacobs. So I think you can mark one up there for President Trump. So it's, none of these things are absolute certainties, but I think Jacobs is in pretty good shape there right now.
Dr. Bob, did you want to comment on General Michael Flynn? Pretty much, I don't know if I want to say being in the clear, but the charges being dropped by the feds.
Yeah, can we hang up for a minute there? Can you pause for a minute, Brian?
Yes, I can read the phone book, do all kinds of interesting things.
Hang on.
Let's see. Kind of wondering if Dr. Bob's got one of those big officials he's always talking to on the line. Let's see what we can learn.
I'm doing my show. Can I call you right back? Yes. Okay, I'll be back to you in 10, 15 minutes. Good enough. Bye.
Dr. Bob, that was fascinating. I feel like someone at the NSA here.
Yeah.
Dr. Bob, can I get your thoughts on General Flynn's situation?
Yes. Well, that went pretty much the way I thought it had to go. But I must say, listening to the three appellate judges questioning Flynn's attorney, who, by the way, her name's Powell, I think.
Sydney.
Tall, redheaded lady.
Sidney Powell, yeah.
Yeah, boy, she's good. She is. I don't know what she charges an hour, but boy, and I think she's doing Flynn's case pro bono, so
wow.
That'll be helpful to him. But they were really grilling her, and I thought, boy, I don't know, this doesn't look good. But the two ladies on the panel voted pretty clearly for Flynn and upheld basically what I thought, and a lot of legal scholars thought, was pretty clear that Judge Sullivan had no authority to, because he didn't like the way the prosecution was going, to appoint somebody else to help with the prosecution. I mean, hold on here just a minute. I mean, how impartial is that? And so on a 2-1 margin, the court said to Sullivan, the case is dropped. Drop the case. That's it. Now, I don't know who, Sullivan, I guess, I don't know, could ask for an en banc hearing, which means that I think it's 11 members of the D.C. Circuit then could rehear the case, and they might overrule the three-judge panel. But frankly, I think the D.C. Circuit is probably pretty heavily Republican appointees by now anyway. And frankly, I think the three-judge court's the position is pretty solid in terms of legal terms. So my view would be that Flynn has finally been justified, and the thing is hopefully at an end for the guy. But yeah, it's amazing. And the thing about the Flynn case, and we don't go into all the details, but it was clear even before Trump took office that the FBI and the Obama administration were doing everything they could to get him kicked off his position.
Yeah.
And it's really pretty sick. But I do think that Barr's investigations are going to turn up more situations where the Obama people did everything they could to undercut Trump, even before he was took office. So we'll just see how some of this plays out.
Do you see Barr going after Obama and Biden, as reports are that the FBI notes show that Obama and Biden were in on the whole anti-Flynn thing?
Yeah, well, I don't think he's going to go after either one of them in any kind of legal sense, but it may well be that there'll be emails and other forms of communication and perhaps testimony somewhere that's going to be pretty embarrassing probably to Obama and Biden. I'm not certain Biden, frankly. I'm not certain anybody paid much attention to Biden, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But certainly the Obama, people with Obama, Susan Rice and McCabe and Comey and some of these other people, could again be made to look pretty embarrassed. And let's hope it's more than that, frankly. So,
Dr. Bob, on this topic, the whole Trump draining the swamp thing, how's that gone?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is you just can't walk into Washington and start draining the swamp. It would be nice if there were a valve there that you could kind of turn, probably a 20 or 30-foot valve, so you got plenty of, and just empty it out. But you can't do that. There are Washington is infested with long-term bureaucrats and lobbyists who make well, the bureaucrats don't make a lot of money, but these political appointees and these lobbyists are making huge amounts of money off the government, and they're not about to give up their positions willingly. And a couple of examples we can look at right now, for example, the House Judiciary Committee with that wonderful Mr. Nadler is recently, in the last day or two, questioning a couple of career Justice Department people about how nasty the Trump administration has been and how unfair, etc. Now, where do you suppose they got these two guys out of the Justice Department? They think it was a random pick? no, they sniffed around there, and they got a couple of people who are unhappy with with Trump to start with, and now they get him up before the House Judiciary Committee and have him. And as far as I can see, all they've been testified to is things that they're unhappy with. There doesn't appear to be any illegalities there. But another aspect of this is Bomber Bolton and his book. Another example of, you can't just come in and sort of clear the slate. Trump moved Bomber out, and now he's coming back with this claim that all these things happened because he was in the room, and a number of which claims have been directly contradicted by other people in the room. But nonetheless, he hangs around and he gets his shot, and he'll probably make a lot of money on this. So it does show that you coming in there and really trying to drain the swamp to clean out a lot of these agencies and regulations and limitations on business and Americans is just not easily done. And so even other Republicans, you see them kind of tippy-toeing around with their milquetoast approach to being conservative. And the Democrats, of course, when they get in there, they just pump it up even higher. So you get people like Chuck Schumer, who is more than happy to fund more and more agencies, because then he turns around and hands the money back out to people in New York State and, takes full credit for it. So he's got quite a little racket going there. But he, of course, is not the only one. And it just goes to show Trump has come in there with a weed whacker, and obviously there's some real blowback that, they're trying the best they can to embarrass him.
Dr. Bob, switching to state news, and a couple of Cuomo questions, starting out with, do you think Cuomo will allow for high school sports, high school football, college sports, college football in the fall?
Well, I think you got a couple of questions there, Brian. What he'll do with high school football, I don't know. I think he's got to get the high schools started. He's got to get the grade schools and high schools. He's got to get these back in school and get them off the streets. So I don't know how he'll do it, and hopefully the virus will stay reasonably dormant, that he can in fact do that. Now he has, of course, a lot of control over that. Colleges is another issue, and when it comes to right now, we're watching this whole issue of college football because the folks at Alfred, frankly, are pretty interested in that. But the NCAA has a big say in that. And, if they come in and say, well, no, we just can't go with it, then that's pretty much the end of the game for college football. The problem, of course, there is that some of these schools, there's millions of dollars. I mean, there are millions of dollars at stake here when you're talking these Division I schools. And for schools like Alfred, you're talking, I think 50% of our incoming class is engaged in sports. Now, that's not all football by any means, but probably, and again, I'm just guessing here. I don't want Coach Rankel all over me, but I'm thinking probably around 80 of the incoming freshmen are here to play football and be students. So it's a big chunk of the enrollment. On the other hand, you look now, Bowdoin in Maine and Wesleyan, both really fine undergraduate schools, have already canceled their football season. And my understanding is that Ithaca College will not be starting school until the 10th of October. So it's very hard to see how they can be running a football program before then, if they run one at all. So you're seeing a lot of places where the virus generally is forcing schools to close, and then forcing them to back off on these contact sports like football, because football you have a lot of you're supposed to have a lot of contact there, and you get one or two kids that test positive. I just don't see you're going to have to quarantine, 8 or 10 other kids. So it's a really unfortunate situation all the way around there. But on the other hand, the basic safety of our students is number one, and so it's really on a bubble right now. But some schools have already basically thrown in the towel for the fall.
Wow. Dr. Bob, another Governor Cuomo question. Governor Cuomo and a couple other governors, one from Connecticut, one from New Jersey, Governor Murphy and Lamont, they announced a joint incoming travel advisory saying that people coming in from over half a dozen states, including North and South Carolina, we have a lot of people from around here who would be coming back from those two states. They would have to undergo, a 2-week self-imposed quarantine. What do you make of that?
Well, I'll tell you, I find it personally pretty inconvenient. And again, I just don't know how that's going to play. As you know, Florida there for a while put a quarantine on people flying in and coming in from New York. So I guess, and of course, Florida's having some serious problems now. I guess it's one way of basically trying to limit the spread of the virus. I'm not quite sure how you enforce that. I guess the state troopers would be stopping cars with out-of-state license plates.
That's what Cuomo said he was going to do.
Yeah. Plus, people flying in on flights from these states, you would catch them right at the airport. Then again, I don't know how you enforce it from that point on, until you follow up to make sure people were in fact quarantining. It will, there's no question, clog up all kinds of traffic, and I'm not certain what do you do with truck transport and things of that sort.
Right.
I assume he'll allow those to go through. He's looking at basically, I guess, tourists coming up from the south to enjoy the beautiful summers we have up here, which we do, by the way. Again, I think, he's trying to keep, New York State has made some real gains here in keeping the virus under control, and I think he's trying to hold on to those gains. But again, that does tie into what are we going to do in terms of the fall and opening schools and things of that sort. Boy, that's going to be a real challenge.
Well, Doc, with that, we have to leave it. I want to thank you so much for this week's Words of Wisdom.
Well, if you come up with any great ideas, I'll hold them till next week, Brian.